You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
And now a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud. Identity is the new battleground, and attackers are exploiting stolen identities to infiltrate your organization. Traditional defenses can't keep up. SpyCloud's holistic identity threat protection helps security teams uncover and automatically remediate hidden exposures across your users, from breaches, malware, and phishing to neutralize identity-based threats like account takeover, fraud, and ransomware. Don't let invisible threats compromise your business. Get your free corporate darknet exposure report at spycloud.com/cyberwire and see what attackers already know. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. Google issues an emergency patch for a Chrome 0 day. A new malware campaign uses fake DocuSign CAPTCHA pages to trick users into installing a rat. A high-severity Splunk vulnerability allows non-admin users access to modify critical directories. Experts warn Congress that Chinese infiltrations are preparations for war. Senators look to strengthen cybersecurity collaboration in the U.S. energy sector. Crocodilus Android malware adds fake contacts to victims' phones. SentinelOne publishes a detailed analysis of their recent outage. Cartier leaves some of its cyber sparkle exposed. Our guest is Jon Miller, CEO and co-founder of Halcyon, discussing bring your own vulnerable driver attacks. And Microsoft and CrowdStrike tackle hacker naming, or do they? It's Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is your CyberWire Intel Briefing. Thanks for joining us here today. It's great to have you with us. Google has issued an emergency update patch to a Chrome 0 day, the third such vulnerability in Chrome exploited in the wild this year. The flaw, found in Chrome's version 8 JavaScript engine, allows out-of-bounds memory access and was discovered by Google's threat analysis group. A mitigation was applied within a day, and the full fix is included in recent versions for Windows and Mac and Linux. Google is withholding full details of the exploit until more users apply the patch. Earlier in 2025, Chrome 0 days were used in espionage and account hijacking campaigns. Last year, Google patched 10 exploited or demoed Chrome 0 days. A new malware campaign is using fake DocuSign CAPTCHA pages to trick users into installing the Net Support Remote Access Trojan, according to Domain Tools. The attack begins with a spoofed website that mimics DocuSign branding. Users are prompted to check a box, which triggers clipboard poisoning. A malicious PowerShell script is copied to the clipboard with instructions to run it manually. If executed, the script downloads further payloads, sets up persistence via GitHub-hosted malware, and ultimately installs Net Support RAT for remote control. The campaign uses familiar tools and layered tactics like ROT13 encoding and script chaining to evade detection. Domains mimicking Okta, Netflix, and Spotify were also used. Domain Tools warns users to be cautious of sites prompting script execution and to inspect URLs and certificates carefully to avoid deception-based threats. A high-severity vulnerability in Splunk Universal Forwarder for Windows allows non-admin users to access and modify critical directories due to incorrect permission settings during installation or upgrades. With a CVSS score of 8, this flaw affects multiple versions, posing significant risks to organizations that rely on Splunk for log forwarding and security monitoring. The bug enables potential exposure or manipulation of log data, which could lead to data breaches or tampered audit trails. Splunk urges immediate upgrades to patched versions. For those unable to upgrade, a mitigation is available to strip vulnerable permissions. This fix must be applied after any install, upgrade, or reinstall to prevent unauthorized access and maintain security integrity. Retired Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster warned lawmakers that China's deep infiltration into U.S. telecommunications and critical infrastructure is part of a broader war preparation strategy. Speaking at a House Homeland Security Committee field hearing, McMaster linked recent cyber campaigns like Volt Typhoon to China's growing military ambitions, including a 44-fold defense budget increase and a possible first-strike nuclear capability. He also cited Chinese surveillance balloons aimed at U.S. strategic communications. Palo Alto Network's Wendy Whitmore echoed concerns, noting that China, alongside Russia, Iran, and North Korea, is becoming more aggressive in cyberspace. Palo Alto blocks up to 31 billion attacks daily, including millions of new threats. Whitmore stressed the need for faster two-way public-private collaboration and supported legislation to strengthen the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative. The FCC has issued a proposed rule that would expand ownership reporting requirements for nearly all entities it regulates, aiming to identify control by foreign adversaries. The rule would affect companies not currently required to report ownership, including private radio license holders and video service providers. Entities must disclose if they are controlled by foreign adversaries like China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea, including if such parties hold 10% or more in voting or equity interest. Failure to comply could result in fines or license revocation. If foreign control is reported, detailed ownership disclosures would be made public and could trigger national security reviews. The FCC is also considering requiring updates or periodic reporting, with final rules likely to take effect by 2026. Senators Jim Risch, Republican from Idaho, and John Hickenlooper, Democrat from Colorado, have introduced the Energy Threat Analysis Program Act to strengthen cybersecurity collaborations in the U.S. energy sector. The bill would formalize the Department of Energy's Energy Threat Analysis Center as a central hub for cyber threat intelligence, coordinating efforts between the DOE, CISA, intelligence agencies, and private energy operators. The goal is to improve early warnings and threat mitigation in response to increasingly complex cyber attacks. The legislation comes amid growing concern over fragmented threat reporting and critical infrastructure vulnerabilities, highlighted by a recent blackout in Spain and Portugal. Both senators emphasized the need for a resilient energy grid and improved data sharing to safeguard national security. The latest version of the Crocodilus Android malware introduces a new feature that adds fake contacts to victims' phones, allowing attackers to spoof calls from trusted sources like banks or friends. First observed in Turkey in early 2025, Crocodilus has since expanded globally, now targeting victims on every continent. Alongside enhanced social engineering, recent updates also include stronger evasion techniques, such as code packing and local data parsing. Researchers warn Crocodilus is evolving fast and urge users to download apps only from trusted sources. SentinelOne has published a detailed analysis of the global outage that impacted its services on May 29th, attributing it to a flaw in a legacy infrastructure control system. The disruption, lasting about 20 hours, affected access to the SentinelOne management console but did not compromise endpoint protection or customer data. The incident began when a new account triggered faulty configuration logic, erasing critical DNS and network routes. SentinelOne has since taken steps to prevent recurrence, including accelerating its move to a new infrastructure as code architecture, backing up transit gateway settings, and enhancing automated recovery and customer communication protocols. Notably, GovCloud customers were unaffected due to infrastructure segregation. Tamaz Szabo, a 26-year-old Romanian citizen, pleaded guilty to conspiracy and making bomb threats as part of a swatting campaign targeting about 100 individuals, including a former U.S. president and members of Congress. The plot involved false emergency calls to provoke aggressive police responses. Szabo, extradited last year, acted with Serbian co-defendant Nemanja Radovanovic, who faces pending charges. The indictment describes politically neutral targeting and includes a January 2024 hoax involving a fake murder and bomb threat at a former official's home. Cartier, the luxury brand known for diamond-studded discretion, has disclosed a data breach that left some of its sparkle exposed. In a politely worded note, Cartier admitted that an unauthorized party briefly wandered through its systems, collecting names, emails, and countries of residence, and presumably not for a holiday card list. The company assures customers it's now added extra polish to its cybersecurity, but advises staying wary of any mysterious messages. Fashionably late to the Breach Club, Cartier joins Dior and Tiffany in May's cyber soiree.
Here's the thing to do. Spend $1,000 or $2 at Cartier.
Coming up after the break, my conversation with Jon Miller from Halcyon. We're discussing bring your own vulnerable driver attacks, and Microsoft and CrowdStrike tackle hacker naming. Or do they? Stick around. Compliance regulations, third-party risk, and customer security demands are all growing and changing fast. Is your manual GRC program actually slowing you down? If you've ever found yourself drowning in spreadsheets, chasing down screenshots, or wrangling manual processes just to keep your GRC program on track, you're not alone. But let's be clear, there is a better way. Vanta's trust management platform takes the headache out of governance, risk, and compliance. It automates the essentials, from internal and third-party risk to consumer trust, making your security posture stronger, yes, even helping to drive revenue. And this isn't just nice to have. According to a recent analysis from IDC, teams using Vanta saw a 129% boost in productivity. That's not a typo, that's real impact. So, if you're ready to trade in chaos for clarity, check out Vanta and bring some serious efficiency to your GRC game. Vanta, GRC, how much easier trust can be. Get started at vanta.com/cyber. Jon Miller is CEO and co-founder of Halcyon. I recently caught up with him at the RSAC conference for this sponsored conversation about bring your own vulnerable driver attacks. We are continuing our conversations here at RSAC 2025, and joining me here is Jon Miller. He is the CEO and founder of Halcyon. Jon, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So before we dig into our topics here, for folks who may not be familiar with the company, give us the brief description of what Halcyon does.
So Halcyon is the first focused anti-ransomware company. So I came up with the idea that even though we're in the most sophisticated state of cybersecurity ever, the ransomware groups keep getting more ground, right?
Yeah.
And so my theory was it's because everyone's too generalized, right? If you look at an endpoint, if you look at a network technology, they have to stop everything in a MITRE ATT&CK framework. And my thought process was, if we focused on ransomware, took apart what they were doing, and tailor-built an obstacle for them, their techniques, their tools, we could be more effective, right? So essentially, take a look at the edges of the security landscape where there are cracks that the attackers are exploiting, And instead of trying to build something that's parity that already exists, just focus on those cracks, right? Coming in with another layer, make sure the data doesn't get exfiltrated, make sure that they can't lateralize through an environment, and make sure that if they can affect availability of data, we can always recover it at a speed that's so quick, it's not a big deal anymore, right? I like to tell customers that if a ransomware attack's successful and it just affects a single host and the data doesn't leave that host and the data that gets encrypted on that host is back in like an hour, is it a big deal? And the answer is always, no, it's not. We can deal with one computer being down. It's all of them being down that turns into a big problem.
Right.
So we tried to focus on that value prop, not necessarily protecting everything, but being resilient against an attack where if they're successful, you can evict them out and make sure that they never get enough leverage to make somebody pay them.
Well, I mean, help me understand your approach to that problem. How much of it is looking at the individual ransomware groups and the tactics, techniques, and procedures that they use, versus looking at the menu of potential weaknesses that the users have?
It's all ransomware groups.
Okay.
Right? So that's where we really differentiated it. I like to call it attacker-led growth, right? There are 300, 350 different ransomware groups. And when you look at their tools and tactics and, procedures, they're much similar than they are dissimilar, right? So the whole thought was, it's not like defending against an APT where they have a goal and they will do whatever it takes to get that goal. Ransomware's a business. They're all about ROI. So if you watch what they're doing and build the biggest obstacle for that, you break them. They get to a point where they're expending so much effort, they're not gaining ground, they literally just pack up and leave, right? And that's what it's all about, exploiting the weaknesses of the fact that ransomware is a business, and because of that, you can come at them with business obstacles and break it.
As you look at the trending lines of ransomware, the evolution of it, in my mind, we're seeing less and less encryption and more double extortion. Is that an accurate perception?
So I wouldn't say less and less.
Okay.
Right? What we found over the last couple of years are people are more reserved in paying them.
Yes.
Everybody understands if you pay these guys, it keeps them going.
Right.
So everyone, is trying to get backups, do their own recovery. And what they found is, that double extortion piece of exfilling those files and threatening to leak them gets people to pay. There are definitely groups now where that's all they do. They don't do the lockup at all, but the lockups are still happening. And then what we're starting to see, and you're gonna love this. So you had the encryption, the single extortion, then you had the data double extortion, triple extortion comes next, right? Which is, so think about this.
Go on.
and
what's left? What's left to extort, John?
The actual information, right? So in double extortion, they have the information. They say, if you don't give me money, I'm going to leak it.
Right.
Triple extortion is, I'm going to read the data and make money off of that, right? So imagine they compromise a giant corporation.
Yeah.
And this is, everyone loves talking about AI at RSA. What happens when you can take an entire company's email spool and have an LLM read every email and then answer your questions, right? All the chat logs. We're now at a point now where there was so much data that they couldn't really make use of it, right? You're looking for a needle in a haystack, but with AI, it's like go through every piece of hay and separate out all the needles. So I think you're gonna see more and more of, more attackers, more aggressive attacks, and then them trying to figure out what they can do to essentially increase the pain, right? How do I get more leverage? If you're not paying now, how can I make it more painful to make sure that you pay?
There's a term that you shared with me that I want to be sure we touch on, and it's bring your own vulnerable driver, BYOVD. Explain that for us. Unpack that.
All right, so before I unpack that, I saw a LinkedIn post this morning.
Yeah.
And somebody's been going around RSA graffiti tagging, right? And it was funny because 10 years ago, there was this whole like AV is dead, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I think it was one of the semantic execs came out, he was like, AV is dead, and then everyone jumped on it. What they're tagging is EDR is easily bypassable. And bring your own vulnerable driver attacks are the easiest, most common way for EDR to be bypassed in a ransomware attack today, as well as APT attacks. And so what bring your own vulnerable driver is the attackers have figured out, instead of going out and finding a 0-day and writing an exploit, I can take an old Windows driver that's still signed and valid and in the Windows catalog, where someone's already found a vulnerability, they've already published POC code, the manufacturer responded, they came out with a new version, but the problem is you can still load that old version, right? They don't block it, because if they blocked it, people that hadn't upgraded yet, they'd kill them. So what they do is when an attacker gets in, they'll actually bring a vulnerable driver with them. If there's one not present, they'll then load that up into the system, exploit it to get kernel privileges, and then disable the EDR, right? And it's something that the EDR can't really protect against. It's a problem with Windows that architecturally can't really be solved because nobody updates everything in real time.
Right.
And so we were the first company to come out with what are the best ways to protect the EDR, right? CrowdStrike's an amazing product, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that it's on delivering that protection in an attack when you actually need it? And so we rolled out what we called sidekick protections, like Batman and Robin. George Kurtz is Batman, I'm Robin.
Young Ward.
Yeah, I'm this young Ward. And it's not just CrowdStrike, it's Defender, it's Palo Alto, it's SentinelOne.
Right.
But actually watching for the signals of these attackers coming in and attacking the EDR to convict them and shut them down. Or if they get all of the way to actually terminating the process, be the one that's sitting there watching it and being like, CrowdStrike just got disabled, something bad's going on, right? Where that level of signal hasn't existed yet, right? It's very much following what the attackers are doing and trying to figure out the best way in very focused features to really defeat like kind of that 80%. I always joke with my team that we have like 10 different layers of protection and we shot for 80%. And I'm like, 10 layers, 80%, that's 800% efficacy. I can live with that, right? But it very much, I was at a talk last night and George Kurtz was talking about the crash, the unpleasantness, right? And he was like, it was a Swiss cheese problem where there are always holes. And he was like, it was the one time where all the layers went together and you could see all the way through. Right? So it's how do you come in with those multiple layers where even if somebody's gonna get through, you know on the other side there's a layer, on the other side there's a layer, so on and so on. It's all about defense in depth.
Well, so help me understand, as a comparatively non-technical person, how does it work? Are you looking at behavioral things? How do you make sure?
All of it.
Yeah.
So the best way to think about us is we fill this spot between where an EDR ends and you have to go to backups to recovery, right?
Okay.
So after an antivirus or EDR, whatever, takes a look at something and says, this is good, let it run. We come in behind them and we take a second look. So we have a pre-execution engine that, this is gonna sound crazy, runs on machine learning models. They're just trained on ransomware. Nobody else has done that for some reason. So it goes to run, we take a look at it and say, do we think this is ransomware? If we think it's ransomware, we kill it, right? If we're not sure, we'll let it run. And then we have a behavioral engine. And what we do behaviorally is we look for data exfiltration and stop it. We look for them attacking the EDR. We look for them tampering with backups. And then we look for the actual ransomware encryption behavior. They start encrypting files and deleting stuff. And so if it gets that far, we'll actually stop the encryption. What really makes us unique is when that encryption starts to run, we capture and copy the keys. We tokenize them and we cache them. We don't know if they're good or bad yet, but we know they could be, so let's hold on to it for a little bit. And if it's ransomware, we'll stop it. There's a stage that comes in where there's an attacker on your network on that host with admin credentials. So we come in, we have a team called Rise. It's a 24/7 SOC. And in real time, right, within 60 seconds, they'll start evicting that attacker. They'll start looking at what account is it using, how did it get there, push them out, and then at the same time, recover that endpoint. So we always say within minutes of getting the attacker out of the network, everything's restored. If something was encrypted, it's decrypted. It makes networks the most theoretically resilient we can come up with to a ransomware attack.
Where do you suppose we're headed with ransomware? Like, what's next?
Not to a good location, I'll tell you that. The barrier to entry to ransomware is really low. Right? You said that you're not a technical guy. I could teach you how to be a ransomware guy in 2 hours.
It's my retirement plan, John.
So, I don't know if this is a good thing to say. Belize has no computer crimes laws, right? So if you want to retire down to Belize, they speak English there, run a ransomware empire. Just focus on hacking Russian companies, and I think everyone will be okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm being flippant about it, but I think that's a really important point, is that the barrier to entry is practically zero.
And it keeps getting easier and easier and easier.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing is the actual attackers are growing. We're getting more people that are willing to do this because, well, you might not be willing to be a hacker to go hack someone for $1,000 for $20 million, right? Like, and if your sophistication is sysadmin level, you can crush it. And there's no real, I mean, the FBI is doing a great job, but the problem is the majority of these people are in Russia, and there's very little they can do there.
Right.
So you've got all of these threat actors coming online in countries where they normally didn't have offensive cyber stuff going on before. And then on top of it, I hate to say it, but critical infrastructure, the Colonial Pipeline attack proved that you can attack American critical infrastructure, you can get paid for it, and you can get away with it. Right? So now we have, like, you can do whatever you want. Everyone that wants to do it can do it. It's super easy. You're gonna get money, and nobody's gonna try to arrest you. It's full on a recipe for disaster, right? I always used to say that security is only limited by the amount of people that have the skill and the motivation to do it, right? Like a great example was when Heartbleed came out years and years ago. It wasn't like the internet broke. And I'm like, it's not that 1,000 new attackers came online that day to exploit that vulnerability. And what we're seeing now is just above linear rise in the actual people that are willing to do this and have the capabilities to. And then on top of it, the sophistication of these attacks is going over kind of nation state levels now, where nation states have rules. There are things they're allowed to do, there are things that they aren't allowed to do. Criminals have no rules, right? They get to do whatever works best. And I think the next 5 to 10 years are gonna be not great.
That's Jon Miller, CEO and co-founder of Halcyon. And finally, one of the challenges of having this particular job that this podcast host has is keeping track of all of the names of different threat actors. You got your Cozy Bears, you got your Volt Typhoons, you got your Salt Typhoons. Everybody has different names for things. Well, we've been seeing a lot of coverage of a collaboration between Microsoft, CrowdStrike, Google's Mandiant, and Palo Alto Networks to join forces to try to clean up this messy, confusing world of hacker group names. Joining me here is Maria Vermazis from the T-Minus Space Daily podcast and also a colleague here at N2K. Maria, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Dave.
So let's dig in here. When you saw this news come across, what was your initial thought here?
Well, the very first thing, honestly, was the XKCD comic about there were 14 competing standards, and now everyone agrees that there needs to be a new standard that covers everyone's cases. And the update is now there are 15 competing standards. So
yes,
it's. I feel like I should just paste that comic on my wall because it applies so often.
Right.
It feels like a good move. I mean, it's a noble thing that they're trying to achieve, and certainly they're huge players in the space. So maybe everyone will follow their lead. I'm sure that's their hope, but I have some concerns about how this will actually work.
Well, there's been a little confusion. I've seen some reporting interpreting this that all these groups are going to adopt Microsoft's naming conventions, and Microsoft uses different types of weather for different groups. But that doesn't seem to be the case. When you look at how CrowdStrike is describing this and some of the other folks, it seems as though this is just going to be a Rosetta Stone where everyone gets to keep their own names, but we have a handy spreadsheet to cross-reference and...
Good luck, everybody. Good luck to whoever has to maintain that. That's going to be such a nightmare.
Right.
Going forward, let alone just at the starting point. So that it's, again, I have so many questions about how this is going to work.
Well, as our CyberWire editor here pointed out, Tim Nodar said that MITRE has been doing this. There's an online source called Malpedia that does this.
Mm-hmm.
So
why not use that? I don't understand. Why do we have to make a new competing standard? I don't get it.
Yeah. Again, I think coming from a position of good faith and trying to address something that everybody recognizes is a problem, but is this a step forward? I don't know.
Time will tell, Dave. Time will tell.
I know. I guess I'm stuck between wanting to be supportive of everyone's good faith efforts here, but left scratching my head as to how this is actually going to change anything and be particularly helpful.
We'll see. I mean, I'm just, I'm just feeling a bit of preemptive pity for the person who has to maintain this moving forward.
Right.
To keep track of all the different group names that everyone's going to be using. Because if it's not just, they're not coming in and saying, this is the law, everybody, because good luck with that, honestly.
Yeah.
This is what we're calling it. Everybody else shut up. No. That people are going to want to put their own stamp on things. Different groups are going to want to name things their way. And what a mess.
Well, let me just close out by saying and suggesting to all of these organizations who are going at this, if you really want to help, and this is a selfish request, include phonetic pronunciation guides for all of these.
Please.
Because as the people who often have to decide how these things are pronounced, is it Cackbot or is it Quackbot? I don't know. Right?
And you put a Q without a U. How are we supposed to figure this out? Yeah.
Right, exactly. And all the elite speak stuff and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to add something to these that could be helpful to those of us who have the responsibility of actually saying these names out loud, include phonetic pronunciation guides. We will be forever grateful, and we will forgive you for the redundancy that this new standard seems to be introducing to the ecosystem. All right, Maria, thank you so much for joining us. As they say, time will tell. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. We'd love to hear from you. We're conducting our annual audience survey to learn more about our listeners. We're collecting your insights through the end of August this year. There's a link in the show notes. Please do check it out. N2K's senior producer is Alice Carruth. Our CyberWire producer is Liz Stokes. We're mixed by Trey Hester with original music and sound design by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Peter Kilpie is our publisher, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. everybody, Dave here. I've talked about Delete Me before, and I'm still using it because it still works. It's been a few months now, and I'm just as impressed today as I was when I signed up. Delete Me keeps finding and removing my personal information from data broker sites, and they keep me updated with detailed reports, so I know exactly what's been taken down. I'm genuinely relieved knowing my privacy isn't something I have to worry about every day. The Delete Me team handles everything. It's the set it and forget it peace of mind. And it's not just for individuals. Delete Me also offers solutions for businesses, helping companies protect their employees' personal information and reduce exposure to social engineering and phishing threats. And right now, our listeners get a special deal, 20% off your Delete Me plan. Just go to joindeleteme.com/N2K and use promo code N2K at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/N2K, code N2K.